Hello students, my name is Purushottam Vishnu Bhandare. I am Project Officer at Tata Institute of Social Sciences, Mumbai. We will be discussing of the module Migration towards Cities and Economic Status. The world's population is becoming increasingly urban. Sometime in 2007 is usually reckoned to be the turning point when city dwellers formed the majority of the global population for the first time in the history. Today, the trend towards urbanization continues. As of 2014, it's thought that 54% of the world's population lives in the cities, and it is expected to reach 66% by 2050. Migration forms a significant and often controversial part of this urban population growth. In fact, cities grow in three ways, which can be difficult to distinguish. First one is through migration, where it's an internal migration from rural to urban areas or international migration between countries, the natural growth of the city's population, and the reclassification of nearby non-urban districts. Although migration is only responsible for one share of this growth, it varies widely from country to country. In some places, particularly in poorer countries, migration is the main driver of urbanization. In 2009, United Nations Habitat estimated that 3 million people were moving to cities every week. In global gateway cities such as Sydney, London, and New York, migrants make up over a third of a population. The proportion in Brussels and Dubai is even greater, with migrants accounting more than half of the population. The 2015 World Migration Report by the International Organization for Migration argued that this mass movement of the people is widely overlooked amid the global concern of the urbanization, and the report considers the widespread challenges in terms of service provision for the growing numbers of people moving into cities around the world. Where the significance of migration to cities is recognized, it is widely seen as a problem. In 2013, a United Nations study of all 193 United Nations member states found that 80% had policies to reduce rural to urban migration. This figure has risen substantially in recent decades, up from 38% in 1996. It is also more pronounced in poorer countries. 88% of the at least developed countries reported policies to reduce migration to urban areas. But this negative attitude towards migration to cities may be mistaken. The World Migration Report argues that problems of access to services such as housing, sanitation, education, or employment that result from rural to urban migration are not inevitable. Rather, they are caused by poor planning. Although all socioeconomic classes are reflected in migration to cities, migrants from rural areas are disproportionately poor, and inadequately planning is often a result of a weak political will to support them. Yet, as the report pointed out, migrants are especially motivated individuals. It is not only the sheer number of people involved into that makes migration worth of attention. All around the world, population of the cities are now more diverse than surrounding rural areas. In this way, migrants who come to cities can help diversify their networks that the city can draw upon, for instance, by linking cities to broader global networks. Perhaps the most famous example of this is Eastleigh in Nairobi, known as Little Mogadishu. This neighborhood has become a vibrant global commercial hub powered by enterprising members of the Somali, Ethiopian, and Kenyan diasporas. Let's talk about changing with the times. So, how are the cities coping and changing in this influx of both internal and external migrants? While the vast majority of migration policies are set on the national basis, it is increasingly common for cities to develop their own approach to integrating people who come to the settlement. For example, in the US, many cities support legislation calling for the city police forces not to cooperate with certain forms of federal immigration control, which are deemed to be prejudiced against migrant groups. In 2012, the city of Los Angeles and Chicago passed non-cooperation measures, and in 2014, New York City became the largest city to do so. Yet much of the research into impact of migrants on cities concern international migrants in wealthier countries. A key contribution of 2015 World Migration Report has been to turn the focus of migration to cities in poorer countries. This migration is often shorter distance from rural areas that are relatively close. Rural to city migration is much larger movement of the people at a global scale and is accompanied by a very different set of issues. Adequate housing is probably the most significant these. Although informal settlement exists all around the world, 97% of the slum dwellers live in poorer countries. Now we will discuss about issues of development in small towns. As per the previous discussion, we can identify the potential of small towns, but small cities have already facing a lot of deficiency of physical and social infrastructure, which is necessary to improve the quality of life. McKinsey report have already revealed that expected growth and issues of the cities blow by blow and clearly analyze deficiencies of the various sectors. Status of water supply quantity, share of public transport, parks and open space, sewage treatment, solid waste collection and slum population is given below. And if we consider the small towns, it is far away to provide a good quality of life in upcoming smart cities. Despite all these common issues, there are some invisible factors in development in small cities which need to identify inclusive planning. So what are the dominant factors for migration? Development control norms of the city will be the decider factor for the inclusive growth. So it is very obvious question that the development regulation should be changed same as per the provision of the municipal council. And if it will be changed, then what would be the policy to make it more inclusive? Concept of smart cities will attract the migrants from rural areas, and provision of the physical and social infrastructure will provide a livable environment in small cities. But the question is still anxious that who will be the actual user of this livable environment. Today, land mafia and bureaucrats are the decision makers of the land value in small towns. Because of the inactive municipal council, and such people drum up the speculation purpose, which is the main barricade for the inclusive development. What we can do for the inclusive planning? Inclusive planning is still a mysterious approach for Indian cities. Not only for small towns, even metro cities are not able to deliver the policies to make inclusive development. For the migrants of rural areas, we cannot expect a rich financial background, and as per the migration pattern of the India, migrants come to search a job in these cities. Smart city concept will definitely provide us some job opportunities for migrants, but inclusive smart cities may be a huge scope for development towards education and small scale industries. Now, urban governance. Function of urban local body in small cities is very limited and inactive. Their frigid response of the development and inadequate human resource make the whole system stagnant. Indian small towns are entirely dependent on octroi collection, where other local taxes are almost nil. Small towns are dependent on state and central funds, and in such a discordant situation, how smart city concept will be executed is a big challenge. Inefficiency of local body provides enormous opportunity to bureaucrats and politicians to mint illegally with development control violation. Such hostile forces are very difficult to subjugate, and in such conditions, the concept smart city is good for nothing. We'll see role of migration and growth dynamics. Analysis of earlier national sample survey rounds by several authors has shown that migrants are better off than non-migrants. The NSS provides the MPCE, which is monthly per capita expenditure, decile-wise distribution of migrants, as well as the migration rate by the deciles. The migration rate is much higher in the top deciles, especially for males. In fact, The rate is more than 6 times in the highest decile than the bottom decile for males, and more than 5 times in the highest decile compared with the lowest decile for urban males. As a result, there is higher percentage of migrants in the top decile. And the study by Ravi Srivastava demonstrates the potential of internal migrants for economic growth. In such case, government expectation should be obvious for smart cities, but its development should be free from fatal intentions of bureaucrats and private developers. And honestly speaking, Indian small towns are not prepared for such development. There are some issues which have been continuously overlooked for last 3 decades during planning of the Indian cities. For example, the enforced policy of the city does not accountable for the future migration trends and carrying capacity of the cities, and such an attitude of planning is the main hurdle to estimate the growth dynamics of cities, especially for small towns. We'll see at land policy and requirement of housing. Housing is the most important issue which should be considered before planning of a city. Provisions of infrastructure is just a matter of willingness and finance of government policies, but the real crunch is provision of housing, which usually overlooked by planners. The main threats are bureaucrats and private developers, who strive a lot to make land and housing unaffordable for middle class. The grab of all opportunities of all people before even government plan to develop a city, and smart cities can face same situation during the development process. Estimation of carrying capacities of the cities. Planners are always failed to estimate the real carrying capacity of the city, and that is why actual development concept grow in organic manner. Planners should focus on quality of life, not economic growth. Actual in-migration benefits have been always ignored, and the basic principle of urbanization, which is accountable for education, health and environment, is completely overlooked. We will look at estimation of migration. From so many years, India is striving to get some elite quality of research, and that is the main hurdle of sustainable development. In the field of migration, there are very few research have been published, and due to absence of such important information, planners just overlook the migration aspect as a parameter for development. Such aspect can improve the quality of life of developing cities. Government should take initiative to encourage the research on the topic of migration and then incorporate the findings of the research in policies of development. So what is the impacts of immigration on urban economies? In addition to their direct roles in low-wage industries such as apparel manufacturing and restaurants, immigrant service workers play a supporting role in maintaining business, services, offices, industries in large cities. They also create jobs in the entrepreneurial or small business sectors of the cities. Some evidence suggests that, in addition, immigrants stimulate import and export activities and maintain international financial relationship with their home nations. So what are the effects on economic activities in cities? A useful starting point is to compare the composition of employment in cities with large and small immigrant populations. As along any population group, immigrants affect city economies by increasing the supply of various types of workers and by increasing the demand for variety of goods and services. The question is, what economic effect occurs as the result of greater number of immigrants as compared with the growth of US natives? Nevertheless, when immigrants boost employment in a sector more than native born workers, concentration ratios should be positively correlated with the percentage of a city's foreign born population. Concentration ratios should be inversely related to the foreign born population if natives spur employment in the sector more than do immigrants. These correlation ratios are based on 1990 employment data for the 55 cities with populations of 250,000 or more in 1980. Industries that are positively correlated with concentration of immigrant workers include business services, construction, non-durable and durable manufacturing, and personal services. Construction offers many low-paying blue-collar positions, particularly in non-unionized sectors such as home improvement activities. The business service industry employs both very high and low-skilled people, and lower-skilled immigrants provide support activities for more advanced services and corporate headquarters. Session Koob, 1984. Several other industries are inversely correlated with concentrations of non-immigrants. These include healthcare, education, communications, and agriculture. Healthcare is especially interesting because it demonstrates the double-edged nature of the industry for immigrants. The field employs many low-skilled workers who provide personal care to patients, perform kitchen works, as well as janitorial services. However, healthcare is also expensive and often requires health insurance to be affordable. Immigrants stimulate the industry on the service supply side, yet are less likely to use the services as much as natives do. We'll look at immigrant entrepreneurship. Ethnic entrepreneurship is one of the most visible economic contributions by immigrants to cities. Roger Waldinger, Howard Aldrich, Robin Ward, and others in 1990 argue that entrepreneurial activity among immigrants reflect differences between immigrants and US natives in economic opportunity structures and personal characteristics. The basics of their model can be illustrated among Korean immigrants. Koreans have a much higher rate of self-employment than do other immigrant groups. It has been estimated that as many as one-third of a Korean families own a small business. Lee, 1997. Barriers to opportunities in the mainstream economy influence the preference for the business ownership. In addition, many Koreans have considerably difficult with the English, and racial and cultural differences may generate discrimination against them. Several characteristics of Korean immigrants enhance their ability to own and cooperate successful businesses. These include high skill and education levels, the ability to mobilize several kinds of resources, including capital, close ties to home country producers of goods, strong kinship and cultural networks, and inexpensive labor resources. Successful immigrant entrepreneurs generally identify market niches in which they can operate profitably. One common niche is retail outlets in minor communities. Minority neighborhoods are often underserved, and existing businesses can be acquired from earlier entrepreneurs who wish to retire or move on. Immigrant-owned businesses are clustered in economic sectors. For example, in Jin Yoon, 1995, found that Koreans in Chicago owned 66% of all laundry businesses. Some ethnic business owners focus on meeting the needs of their own ethnic communities, such as the demand for Chinese herbal medication. Let us look at migration rate in million cities, towns, and rural areas. Based on various rounds of national sample survey, the migration rate indicates that internal migration is higher in million plus cities, followed by middle and smaller city towns. Migration towards rural areas was lower and very stable. The last national sample survey data of 2007-8 shows migration has increased compared previously NSS rounds of data. This shows that economic opportunities are much better in million plus cities. The female migration was observed much higher in all areas, as about 2/4 of female reported as migrants as compared 1/10 of the male migrants. Female recorded increase in migration rate during the last NSS round, which can be attributed to women, educational and economic migration towards million plus cities. The table given shows the migration towards million plus cities of male and female with respective rounds of national sample survey, which shows that economic migration towards million plus cities of women is higher. In the NSS 64th round, million plus cities are urban areas having population more than 10 lakh. Below population 10 lakh is considered urban towns, and less than 10 lakh population, all rural areas are considered as rural. In earlier NSS rounds, town size were classified into million cities, town of class 2, which is between 50,000 to 10 lakh population, and class town 3, which is below 50,000 population, and rural areas as rural. MPCE classes and migration rate. Economic status of household generally indicated by income level or per capita income. In national sample survey, income data is not collected. The data on monthly per capita expenditure can be used as proxy of income level. The data on MPCE is correlated with migration status of household. The figure 1 provides the migration rate in different size, class, area and gender. It may be observed that during 2007-8, the migration rate towards million cities was much higher for male and female, followed by other town and rural areas in all MPCE classes. The female migration rate recorded nearly 3 to 4 times higher rate than males. Another interesting observation shown is migration rate increases by MPCE class. The lowest MPCE class shows lower rate as compared to higher MPCE classes. The internal migration data in India shows that it is higher economic class is more mobile than poor lower economic status group. The previous round of data shows similar pattern, so it is not presented here. While concluding this module, we'll see after the analysis of all issues, there is some very explicit finding and some solutions, questions kept unanswered, like who would be the actual user of smart cities. Questions like, are local bodies of small towns prepared to handle the migration towards smart cities? And questions like, did concept of smart city will be able to improve in HDI? In 2010, HDI rank of India is 134 out of 187 countries, and in 2012 it is 136 out of 186 countries. The National Commission for Rural Labour, the report says the probability of migrants and suggests that labourers and farmers with little or no land have high propensity to migrate as a seasonal labor. So, if cities are not affordable, it will create slums which degrade the quality of life. These are the main points which are responsible for India's bottom line position in Human Development Index ranking. Migration to cities significantly contributes to urbanization, and if well planned, migration can enhance the dynamism of cities, making them healthier, more profitable and more interesting places to live. Thank you.